Welcome to Normal Islands Live. I'm Curtis Daly, and I'm joined by Alexander Sallons. Alexander, it's your first time on the show. I mean, you've been on Turn Up before because we spoke about the brilliant Abolish Landlords motion because, of course, you're a Green Party member. But on Normal Island, the first time ever, how are you?
Yeah, man. Thank you very much for having me on. I'm good. I've worked a full day. I've made a lot of coffee. I've drunk a lot of coffee, and now I'm here to talk some politics.
Yeah, good. I mean, we were speaking the other day. You were showing me your coffee. Very impressed. I was telling Alexander that I used to work in a bar and they put me on a morning shift once. They realised they saw my coffee and I was never on it again. But let's talk some politics. Now, this is what we got coming up on tonight's show. Matt Goodwin announced as Reform candidate for the Gorton and Denton by-election. The right wing are complaining about 15-minute cities, and the Holocaust Education Trust suggests that only Jewish victims should be remembered. Now, you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member. But on to our first story. Reform have announced their candidate for the Gorton and Denton by-election, author, GB News host, and right-wing commentator Matt Goodwin. I will be standing for Reform UK in the Gorton and Denton by-election on February the 26th. This election is a referendum on Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. If you want him out, vote Reform. Now, this is a by-election, right? This is about a local constituency voting on stuff or voting for a particular person. And he's saying this is a referendum on Keir Starmer because Reform, all they have is national politics. That's the only thing going for them. I mean, the guy's from London. He's not from Manchester. It says it already, doesn't it? Now, the top three parties in the race are, of course, Labour, Reform and the Greens. Labour haven't announced their candidates and the Greens will be unveiling theirs on Friday. Hannah Spencer has been tipped to be the one selected. She is local. Co-deputy leader Mothin Ali is running to be the candidate too. And whilst he isn't local to the area, he lives in the neighbouring city of Leeds, of course, the place that I live. Goodwin, however, as I said, is born in London. He has no connection to Manchester and is the epitome of a parachuted candidate. Now, Goodwin may be known today as a host on GB News, but he has been around for a while, pushing very right-wing politics. Notably, Goodwin used racist rhetoric after the horrific murders in Southport. This is Novara Media's Ash Sarkar grilling him on the BBC back in 2024.
Hey, Matt. Quick question. Do you think I'm English?
Yes, I don't see the relevance of that question. I think, as Tim said in his opening remarks, there's a tendency to reduce this debate to questions that might have been relevant many years ago, but are less relevant today. The vast majority of people in this country do not view their Englishness or Britishness through a racial lens.
I'm glad you said that, because I'd like to quote from one of your recent blog posts written after the dreadful stabbings in Southport. You wrote this: "These poor children thought they were going to a Taylor Swift-themed dance class. They ended up being murdered. And who murdered them? The son of immigrants from Rwanda." And I suppose my question for you is, why does it matter that the suspect is the son of immigrants if he was born in Cardiff, right? I was born in England. You consider me English. Do you not consider him Welsh?
Well, that was on my Substack, and the reason that I wrote that was because I was trying to make the point that we have a massive problem in this country with integration. We have a massive problem with absorbing millions of people who have come into Britain, principally over the last quarter century. And we can see that. It's instantly obvious to anybody who lives outside of the M25, lots of people in London too, that what we have essentially done is pursued a model that has prioritised group difference, and particularly on the left of politics, I would argue, has allowed minorities to celebrate their distinctive identity, culture, history, but has not allowed the majority to do the same.
But you were the person singling out his difference, that he's the child of immigrants from Rwanda. The point I'm making is that if he's as British, quite frankly, as me or you, why are you emphasising that point of difference?
Well, you didn't go to a dance class and murder children and commit crime, etc. And I think in this particular
And you're saying that's because of his culture, even though we don't know that?
I'm saying that in the context of everything that has happened in this country in recent years, from British Muslims blowing up children at pop concerts, or people from minority backgrounds, recent illegal migrants, asylum seekers committing sexual assaults and rapes and so forth, to what we've seen in 7/7, et cetera, over the last 20 years. It's very obvious, I think, to lots of people in this country that the model of multiculturalism, which I think we first had an interesting debate about it in 2001, around community cohesion and Ted Cantle. We then had a debate about it with Trevor Phillips, so we sleepwalking to segregation. We then had another debate about it in 2011 with the England riots. We haven't answered this question. How are we going to build an integrated society? Imposing mass immigration on this country while thinking that we can integrate this country at the same time is not a serious answer to that problem.
Well, look, I think when it comes to connecting the race riots that we've been witnessing and the tenor of the conversation around immigration, for me, that's undeniable. Of course, me and Matt Goodwin would differ an awful lot on whether immigration is a good thing and how it ought to be handled. But I think I would just like to draw your attention to an element of our back and forth, because what happened in Southport specifically is being assigned by Goodwin as a problem of integration. Why is he assigning it as a problem of integration? We don't know what this attacker's motivations were. That information has not been made available to us. We don't know if it was mental health issues. We don't know if it was ideological. We simply don't know. The reason why it's being assigned that meaning is because this suspect is the child of Rwandan immigrants. So if you say that when a child of immigrants, and in particular a black or an Asian child of immigrants, when they commit a crime, it's because of a problem of integration, and you can always say that simply because of where they come from, would we not call that racist? Because I think that would meet anyone's definition of it.
You've got to admit, Ash Sarkar absolutely bodied Matt Goodwin there. I mean, it's clear what his views are, but despite trying to downplay his racist rhetoric, you know, in terms of who he considers British when he's taken to task, he's a lot more open when he isn't being questioned. This is what he said on Twitter at the end of last year. So Matt Goodwin initially tweeted and said, "A friend texts from abroad this morning. What has happened to your country? 3 words, mass uncontrolled immigration. That's what's happened." Mukhtar, big figure on Twitter. If you go back to the last graphic again. Here we go. Both of the suspects were born in the UK. Matt was jumping to conclusions as usual. And then Matt Goodwin says, "So were all of the 7/7 bombers. It takes more than a piece of paper to make someone British." And then he says, Mukhtar comes back and says, just say that you have to be white to be British and move on. I mean, I think that there is clearly racist. I don't see how you can see it in any other way. And I hate to break it to Matt, but a piece of paper does make you British. I mean, if you have documentation to say that you are a British citizen, then you are British. I mean, does he think that I'm not British? I was born here. My parents were born here. You know, half my family are immigrants. What does he mean by that? Very strange. Now, Goodwin wasn't always on the radical right. In fact, when he was starting his career as an academic, he studied the far right and called out their politics. This is him on the BBC's The Big Questions on the 1st of April 2012.
Are the EDL, are they in a way changing the discourse in this country?
Well, they are a significant movement and they're representing concerns and grievances that are in society. I think on the other hand, probably lots of people who are watching the show may feel concerned about the way in which organisations like the English Defence League tend to have a lot of slippage in the way that they talk about Islam. So an organisation that started talking about militant Islamism now openly talks about Muslims in general. So let's just
talk about Islam again.
Well, okay, but let's just be absolutely clear.
We have to be very precise in our terminology.
Let's be
absolutely a sensitive issue.
Let's be absolutely clear. When we look at the survey evidence and we look at all of the research that's been done, the vast majority of Muslims in this country do not endorse terrorism or suicide bombing. The vast majority of Muslims in this country feel strongly attached to their country and their neighbourhood.
He's very different now, pushing the kind of politics he used to speak out against. Goodwin has had a dramatic shift, as documented by Hope Not Hate. Goodwin was once a serious academic working to understand the drivers of far-right extremism, and for most of his career, relatively liberal, seen by colleagues as hard-working, bright and ambitious. He produced several books and articles on the British National Party and the wider far right. He even sat on the government's anti-Muslim hatred working group and wrote impassioned articles for The Guardian denouncing Islamophobia and the warnings of far-right politics. Sadly, this has all changed, and in recent years, his rightward shift has seen him become a fully-fledged radical right activist. Some have argued that Goodwin became radicalised after he went native or drank the Kool-Aid while studying UKIP for his 2 co-authored books, Revolt on the Right and UKIP Inside the Campaign to Redraw the Map of British Politics. The argument goes that his time with Nigel Farage and other prominent UKIP figures actually served to redraw Matthew Goodwin. But it's this paragraph that may be the best explanation on his right-wing shift. Yet there is another common thread that can't be traced from his earliest days in academia through to today, one that explains his seismic political shift better than anything else. After speaking with a range of former colleagues and academics who have worked with or known Goodwin over the years, there emerged one common point. From his earliest days in academia, he was ruthlessly ambitious, supposedly motivated more by personal advancement than a love or interest in the topic that he researched. So Goodwin is an academic. He should therefore know the importance of data, of facts, and research, yet he's allowed his racist politics to get in the way of it. He was exposed when I show this clip in a second, it's fantastic, but he was exposed by Mehdi Hassan for pushing false numbers about the number of social housing in London going to non-British residents.
You said on GB News, for example, and I quote, more than 50% of social housing in London is occupied by people who are not British. This is not acceptable. Well, forget not being acceptable. It's not true.
I think it's about that. I think it's about 47, 48.
It's not, actually. The percentage of people who are not British in London social housing is about 14%. No. 85% of people are British citizens.
No, so my view would be, in terms of housing, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. I think we should have a principle of national preference in our housing market.
We do. 85% of people in London are British who are in social housing.
No,
you falsely said that more than 50% are not British. That's false.
No, across the country, more generally.
Across the country, it's 90% according to the Ministry of Housing.
When we were allocating social housing, we also used to take into account things like commitment to the community, looking after property, etc. We don't really do that anymore.
That's a fair point. That's not what you said, though. I just want to go with what you said, Matt, with respect. More than 50% of social housing in London is now occupied by people who are not British. That is not true.
I'd need to look at the statistics.
We have the statistics. According to London government,
I also wrote...
the figure in London is 84%. According to the 2021 census data, only 14% of Londoners living in social housing did not hold a UK passport. This has been pointed out to you for the last year.
No, it hasn't.
In fact, you went back on GB News and corrected it and said 48% go to people who are headed by people who are not born in Britain, which is a different point. But you would accept the vast majority of people in social housing are British.
I'd need to look at the data.
I've got the data.
No.
It's right
but
here.
The fact that 48... I think the 48...
Copied and pasted.
I think the fact that 48% of social housing in this country has gone to families that are headed by somebody who was not born in the country is a problem.
So that's a different argument, with respect.
Well,
and let's talk about that argument.
Well, let's have that.
No, let's have that argument. You were wrong on the first point.
I don't think I was wrong on the first
point. You're 100% wrong.
Well, I'd like to look at the data.
The Mayor of London, the census data.
I don't think the Mayor of London would be a credible source on that.
OK, so the London government... The London government don't know who the... All right, how about...
It's a highly political figure.
All right, how about the Ministry of Housing? 90% of social homes go to UK nationals. You're making some sweeping claims and they're wrong. You also said on right-wing channel GB News that I bet nobody knew this, but it's not a criminal offence to hire illegal immigrants in this country. That's not true either. You can be sent to jail for 5 years, according to the British government.
By the way, complaints against audio again. I don't know what's going on. I keep turning my volume up and people keep saying I'm quiet. I've changed it to the raw audio. But anyway, this system needs to go, and we need our studio back. Or we need to get a studio, not back, we've got one. Get a studio so we can do the audio properly. Okay. Now, despite Goodwin standing for reform and constantly telling people that we need to be more nationalist, especially when the conversation is around Palestine, Navarra's Aaron Bastani, quite frankly, embarrassed him on GB News when it comes to Israel.
I want a national unifying politics which puts Britain first, not Pakistan, not Gaza, not any foreign policy thing, Britain first.
Not Israel?
Well,
not Israel? The media's just been talking about Israel and the IDF for the last 4 or 5 days. That's what they talk about. You wouldn't think that high streets in this country are on the, are on the way down, or public services aren't doing well, or people are struggling with their bills. I hear so much about Israel.
Is that a fair point?
Well, my personal view is Israel is a very close ally. Well, until recently, it was a very close ally of the United Kingdom. We should look after our allies. Unfortunately,
no, we shouldn't.
Unfortunately,
we should look after Britain.
Unfortunately, Israel no longer feels that we are a reliable ally, thanks to the Labour government. I care. And
Why?
Lots of British Jews in the country care about that.
The point of politicians in the UK should be to look out for the UK. That's it. That's something, by the way, that the right always used to say. And I used to look at them as somebody on the left going, you know what, I think they've got a point. And large parts of the right, Matthew, have just gone away from that because they just keep on talking about Israel and Tel Aviv and the IDF. They're making the IDF a protected characteristic. You know, need to go to the human rights, watchdog and maybe protect for, IDF lance corporals because they're being discriminated against by the UK, media. It's silly. You had it right. You had it right 5-10 years ago. Look after this country.
It's not silly to say Israel has a right to self-determination and to protect its own people.
Every country does.
That Britons, particularly British Jews, also feel profoundly unsafe about the direction of travel in this country.
So hold on. You started this by saying British politicians shouldn't be talking about other countries. I say ignore Israel. And then you say, no, actually, no, they should be talking about Israel. You need to make your mind up.
I'm not saying they should be talking about Israel. I'm saying I have less of an issue with them talking about countries that are our allies than people who are actively trying to organise politics along sectarian lines, which is what this independent group is going to do. Let's be frank, it's going to be pro-Gaza, anti-Israel, anti-British state, anti-military, pro-Palestine action. It's going to be all the things that this country should not really have.
Do you know, in the last Parliament, do you know what percentage of Tory MPs were members of Conservative Friends of Israel?
How many?
70%. Be friends of your own constituencies.
I don't really need to comment on that because Ambersani did a fantastic job. But I do love how these people talk about sectarian politics, but don't think that Israel is sectarian. Don't think that having a Labour Friends of Israel and Conservative Friends of Israel is sectarian. Wild stuff. Of course, though, we can't forget about this gem.
Matthew, we're going to hang on to you for just a second because you've become rather well known on social media for this tweet, which we can bring up onto the screen. 27th of May this year. I'm saying this out loud. I do not believe that Labour under Jeremy Corbyn will poll 38%. I will happily, in fact, eat my new Brexit book if they do. Now, your book is Brexit, Why Britain Voted to Leave the European Union. You are a man of your word, Matthew.
Well, indeed I am. I was surprised that Jeremy Corbyn added 2 percentage points or got 2 percentage points more than I had expected. And I did say that I would eat this book, which is available at all good bookstores. 2 percentage points makes a big difference. I am a man of my word. So what I'm going to do is just sit here and eat my book while you guys carry on. It's actually a hardback. There are lots of chemicals, but I've got to get through the whole thing, so...
It's just so awkward, isn't it? That guy wants to represent Gorton and Denton. He wants to be a Manchester MP. Wow. Now, the entire theory of Matt Goodwin is this idea of the new elites. He's not talking about the economic elite. He's not talking about the corporations or the billionaires. Rather, this new left-wing or liberal elite. He believes these people have taken over and replaced the old elite, including teachers, apparently.
And in this book, your account includes within that elite a midwife living in their overdraft or a Starbucks barista who happens to study at Russell Group University.
I don't think I mentioned those.
Which is unhelpful. No, because you say repeatedly that the thing that fundamentally composes this new elite, which is 25-30% of the country, is having gone to university.
Not just having gone to university.
That's the primary thing you say in terms of their identity.
Well, let's be clear about how I define the group.
Yeah.
They also tend to come from privileged families in the managerial and professional class. They tend to have gone not just to university, but to an elite Oxbridge Russell Group University. They tend to have financial security and they tend to lean left on issues around culture. And I think a lot of people on the left have looked at this and said, well,
I'm renting or I'm struggling to get by on a certain thing. Therefore, this new elite concept doesn't exist. And I think that's patently not true. I think there are lots of people out there that would meet the definition that I'm talking about. What was also true, though, which is an important point, is that there are lots of people today who will consciously move into low-paid, high-influence positions within society. And I think that's also something that, needs to be thought about and considered alongside the group that I'm talking about. Conservatives typically will not go into those occupations, right? They'll go into they'll
make money.
They'll try and make money. And so, yeah, absolutely. But this is partly the problem of contemporary conservatism,
which is where
right?
power is.
Which is, it's where one form of power is economic power, but there are other forms of power.
So if I'm a sort of a graduate charity worker in London on £25,000 a year and I'm in my overdraft and I can't afford to pay my rent, do I say to my landlord, "Oh, don't worry, I can't pay my rent, but I've read Bourdieu"? I've read the complete works of Shakespeare.
You're not in the new elite. I mean, that person, in my mind, if they were in the new elite, would be from a family in the managerial professional classes, would be doing better financially, would be leaning left culturally, probably would be able to draw on considerable.
The elite is people who are doing well, and the people who are doing well are the elite. That isn't a massive insight, surely. No. Whereas what you're saying is the old elite had economic power, the new elite has political, social, and cultural power, and it fundamentally comes out of the university education. I'll quote you on this. The new elite are now so dominant in the world of politics that some scholars warn we have left the era of mass democracy, which characterised the 20th century, and instead a new dark age of diploma democracy, in which the system has been rewired to service the graduate class. You talk about the new elite and the graduate class interchangeably.
So that's basically Matt Goodwin's theory. He thinks that don't worry about the economic and political elite. Don't worry about the captains of industry. Don't worry about the CEOs and the multimillionaires who control workers. You need to worry about progressives. You think that a graduate going into a human rights organisation, a liberal think tank that earns little to no money, has more power over someone who actually controls our economy. In reality, what this basically means is, look, people become more progressive. Now, caveat here, the far right is emerging. People's opinions on a lot of stuff is getting quite reactionary, but overall, people are typically more progressive, and he can't handle that idea that people just simply disagree with him. Therefore, he has to come up with some crazy conspiratorial scenario that, actually, if you're a social progressive, that's not your view. That's a very top-down view pushed by this so-called new elite. If Matt Goodwin was around in the 70s and people became more and more accepting of same-sex marriage, he wouldn't be saying, okay, people clearly disagree with me on this. Oh, it must be this new elite taking over and they're pushing liberalism. I can tell you right now, that is utter crap. Now, of course, there is a liberal elite, but it's not the liberal that makes them elite. It's the elite that makes them elite. Again, by being a billionaire, a multimillionaire, a politician that serves the very wealthy, those that own capital and the means of production. That's what the elite has always been. And until we change the system, it will always be. Alexander, you're a Green Party member. Are you worried about Matt Goodwin's candidacy?
No, I'm not, to be honest. I think he's going to go down like a bucket of cold sick in Manchester. I was actually talking to my girlfriend about the by-election, wanting to go up because, I want to go support my friends. And her first reaction was, do you really think that you're going to go down well on the doorstep in Manchester? And I was, my first thought was, I am quite southern. Is that going to be authentic? I think Matt Goodwin just takes it to a whole nother level. It really is the best display of parachuting. I mean, I know that Reform, we all know Reform is not a democratic party. We know it's not a democratic movement. It's Nigel Farage's, it's Nigel Farage's show. And we know that GB News is their propaganda wing. That's where they develop their talent, and that's where they develop their voices. And it is patently obvious that the end goal of that is to get them into Parliament, and then they can still have their GB News show. I think for the Greens, like our strength is authentic grassroots campaigning and authentic local candidates, people who can speak to their communities, and while we have a first past the post system, I do think that that's really important. I think if we move to PR, I think we could have list candidates. I think we could have, wider regional candidates and all that kind of stuff. But I think for the moment, while we're in first past the post, we do need to show people that we are authentic, that we do speak to their local concerns, that we are in touch with local issues, and we definitely do have a couple of really good local candidates. Hannah Spencer, I think she is going to be Reform's worst nightmare. Should she be selected? We got the selection coming up this week. After all, it is local members who, in Manchester City Green Party and Thameside Green Party, who will be selecting the candidate. They will get to choose. I personally, I would choose Hannah Spencer, local to the area, local to Manchester, Greater Manchester councillor. She was our candidate for the mayor. An authentic, a working class woman, a plumber, plasterer by trade. I think she's going to be Reform's worst nightmare. She can speak to local concerns. But there are other good candidates. One you didn't mention was Faisal Reza Khan. He's on the national executive of the Green Party, and he's got he's got quite an interesting story himself. I don't understand what could be going through their head, through Reform's head, in picking Matt Goodwin. I don't understand. It must be some hyper form of nepotism that they think that with all of that money they can make someone like Matt Goodwin appeal to the people of Gorton and Denton. And I think from a Green perspective, we have more experience campaigning in places like Gorton and Denton. It's a constituency of two halves put together by the Electoral Commission. You've got very different demographics in the different halves of it, but we've got two active local parties, and then to the south, Stockport Green Party as well, very active, lots of new members. They're good at winning in these places. They're good at winning, in places with lots of ethnic minority voters, Muslims, but also white working class areas as well as the well-to-do areas. We've got more practice here. We've got more game and more ground game. So absolutely we can win it. I think after the gift of Labour blocking Andy Burnham, this is Reform's gift to us. And really it's going to be all about the ground game now, and how many people we can get out. I do wonder, actually, is Reform going to put Matthew Goodwin on the doorsteps, and how is that? I can't envision that going well.
I would love to see that, though. Going around the local doorsteps.
Absolutely.
And people say,
look at the clips.
I can't afford.
Look at the clips he's already delivered to us. I'd forgotten about the paper in the mouth.
Oh, that's a classic.
Imagine him on the doorstep.
But I mean, though, people are going to be like, I'm really worried about paying my bills, or I can't afford. My weekly shop is increased. And he says, "Well, have you read my book on the new elite?" I mean, it's so out of touch. It doesn't mean he can't win.
I'd be surprised if he didn't ask them for their papers. I'm really worried about my bills. Yes, but are you British? And
that's not the message people want to hear on the doorstep. But
no,
but you never know.
People want to know that you're going to bring down their bills, and that you've got actual policies which are going to bring down the bills, especially after Labour. Change, more of the same. People want to know that you have a plan. The Tories are out, fine. What's your plan? And they don't have one other than mass deportations.
Yeah, you're right. It's 8:05, so we are going to move on to our second story. But I love that Matt Goodwin was picked. Very happy about that. It's going to be a funny by-election. Okay, second story. The right wing are outraged again, and this time it's 15-minute cities. Olympic medalist turned right-wing influencer Sharon Davis said this: "Make it known you don't want 15-minute cities, or deal with the consequences of more car fines and very smaller on-camera life." Every single time I try and read that tweet, I struggle. It's just bad grammar. Now, an account by the name of Britain is Broken had a bit more urgency in their message. Are you ready to live in a 15-minute prison? Well, under Keir Starmer's Labour, you have no choice. Labour have just approved the rollout of 15-minute cities across the UK. This will allow councils to access the DVLA database to impose fines on people who fall foul of traffic filters which restrict driving in certain areas. Every day it gets worse in communist Britain. We must rid ourselves of Labour, and quick. People really need to understand their labels. Communism, it has nothing to do with communism. Now, the Telegraph, they ran this. Labour opens door to Stalinist 15-minute cities across Britain. The Telegraph argues that this is authoritarian because of restrictions on driving. Under the scheme, drivers would need a residence permit that allows 100 days of free travel per year through 6 traffic filters during operating hours. Now, don't get me wrong, it's probably a little bit annoying for drivers, a bit of regulation. It's probably a bit annoying, but this idea that it's some sort of hard left communist dystopian idea of having your basic amenities within 15 minutes of walking distance. I mean, the idea that you can have anything you need, go to the shop, to the gym, even work, right? The idea that you could just walk to work instead of spending an hour in the car. You get an extra hour of sleep. And for these people, they think this is like some kind of dictatorship. Who wouldn't want this kind of society? It's a genuine good thing to improve the health and happiness of people. Look at many European cities. And actually, a lot of the people on the right wing would say, oh yeah, why can't we be more like Europe and these sorts of places? Well, some people would like that. I would much rather see less cars, less noise pollution, less roads, and more people just walking around. Maybe you socialize with people. Maybe you don't. I think it's nice to see that people are out and about rather than people just stuck in their cars. It's very isolating. But again, the right wing thinks this is some kind of conspiracy. It's really, really crazy. Alexander, if anything, I thought the idea of 50-minute cities, hyper-localism, is like a conservative idea. Yet, according to them, this is an authoritarian nightmare. What are your thoughts?
No, I think you're right. I think fundamentally there are a couple of points in the implementation of schemes like LTNs which I do think we haven't thought through properly. The use of APN cameras, which are they're the cameras that read your license plate at the boundary of LTN junctions. So if you go through them and you're not, and a lot of drivers don't understand what the signs mean, what the no car signs mean. The state of driver education in the country really needs assessing. They don't, and so they go through. But also the presence of cameras on like a local residential street, I don't think we thought that through, because it does feed into a lot of the conspiracist narratives around this. But the concept of a 15-minute city, I'm pretty sure I live in one. I've got a pharmacist, I've got a shop, I've got a coffee shop, bakery, all literally 5 seconds away on my doorstep. I've got 2, 3, 4 supermarkets within a 10-minute walk, 10-minute bike, 10-minute bike ride, even more. I work 10 minutes down the road. It's great. It's great compared to where I grew up. I grew up in, most suburban Berkshire, and honestly, the pure lack of autonomy, of empowerment to be able to go do stuff, to go find people, to go congregate. Where do you go? How do you get there? It's like for me personally, I'm bike and public transport. I don't have a driving license. I've never really had the disposable income to go learn how to drive, less so now. And I've lived here in Brighton and Hove. I have spent time living in The Hague, and honestly, just the situation over there, the consensus behind the having nice and livable urban architecture, it is cross-party. You get people, you get people, even like the worst prime minister that we've ever had, Mark Rutte, riding his bike to work. He's not going to tear apart, or was it the 50-minute cities? He's not going to tear apart the bike lanes there. So I definitely think that it is, but it's this toxic strain of neoliberalism that seeks to tear apart any strain of commonality, any kind of common experience that we have, whether it be on the bus or just walking down the street, riding, people riding their bikes together. You can't ride side by side because you're holding up my journey, my individual journey over your having a nice bike ride with your friend. You can't do that. It's my car journey. I'm in my little car. It's that. It in so many different ways, neoliberalism has torn us apart from common experience, and this is just one more way.
Yes, absolutely. I think driving is very neoliberal. Of course, when people drive, if you need to drive, you need to drive. But the idea of people having sort of SUVs in London make me sick.
Look, a car is a tool.
Crazy.
It is its own tool. It has its own purpose and its own appropriate purpose. Just the same as a bicycle is. I'm not gonna. Actually, no, I have cycled to the hospital when I needed to. But generally speaking, I would get a taxi. I would use a car. But I don't think it is about the appropriate use. And if you give people the freedom to go and drive everywhere, they will. But yeah, I do think we need to move away from APN cameras, take the cameras out of the residential streets, move towards reclaiming that space, put down the bollards, put down the trees, put down pocket parks, put down some benches, put a little playground at the end of the park, at the end of the road, do that instead of cameras. And I think we'll have a much different reaction,
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on LTNs. I think it's a bit clumsy. I don't like any kind of regulation which can penalise those who have less money, because if you have less money, your car quality is pretty bad. It can pump emissions out. It's kind of a bad cycle to be in. I get that.
There are definitely good and bad LTNs.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
But what I find quite interesting about the modern right wing is that on some stuff, they do really connect with people. When it comes to immigration, we understand that people in this country and, globally don't have the best attitudes towards immigration and immigrants. Even some culture things, the right wing can connect with people on, whereas the left, obviously, largely when it comes to material conditions. But there seems to be this new wrinkle within the right wing that they choose some really, really strange topics to be completely out of touch. Now, of course, on Twitter, you might get a bunch of retweets and likes by talking about Stalinist Britain because of 50-minute cities. But if you speak to someone just in real life and have that conversation, they'll look at you and think you're mad. I find it, Chagos Islands, for example, of course, for Dragonians, it's important, but for the people at large, the way GB News and Reform push Chagos, and you speak to your average person, again, people don't really care. What is going on with the modern right wing where they've picked out very certain niche things, which to most people are thinking, what the hell are you talking about?
I don't think most people would be able to pick out Chagos on a map. I don't even know that I could pick out Chagos on a map. I probably could. It would be 50-50.
I definitely couldn't, by the way. And I'm not very good at geography, so I'm admitting that.
No, Cal couldn't either.
Yeah.
I think they want to pick up an issue. I think they want to. They're testing the ground. They're trying to find what's gonna pick up. They can find they can find a little niggle. They can find a little a little weak point, and then they can break it open. And then they can take it somewhere. And then we really don't know how far they can take it. But like. Working as I do as a barista, I do end up talking to quite a lot of people, and you do talk. I do talk to people about politics in the shop. Probably not supposed to, but I think most people understand that having so many cars and bigger and louder and heavier cars everywhere, they know that it's not pleasant. We have people, you want a nice street to go shopping on. You want a nice street with nice shops. You want it to be clean. You want it to be clean of pollution. You want the air to feel nice. You want nice trees down it. That's not left, that's not left wing. And I think a lot of the more sensible right wing people would probably agree with it. But they completely have vacated the space to a bunch of nuts who seem to think that having these ridiculous, like they're almost the size of World War I tanks, some of these SUVs. It's insane. Doing the school run of these things, they think that's the height of sophistication, the height of luxury. And honestly, I don't see a way back for I don't see a way back for a lot of these people. They're because the moment that you put any restriction on them, they will throw their toys out the pram. The only way to make concrete change in this, if you look at the Netherlands, the only way to make concrete change on this is hard political will. That's what they did in Walthamstow. The Labour Council there in Walthamstow, they put in a bunch of cycle lanes. They had mass protests on the council. On the council doorstep? They had people saying, the death of the high street. Here's my cardboard coffin. Death of the high street. They stuck with it, and it's still there. It's all still there.
Yeah, there's something very anti-conservative about the modern conservative movement. But I agree with a lot of what you're saying there. But let's move on. Before we go on to our final story, you know what I'm going to say? It's the 2026th year of this planet. Not really, in terms of the way you count. I'm not a flat earther, nor am I a, what do they call them, creationist. But 2026, we want this to be a big year for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put us on the map. We would like to be, we'd like to have a full studio. As you know, we've had some slight issues with microphones and tech, and we want it to be resolved by having a producer in the studio and have guests in the studio. It'd be so good. And of course, we want our contributors to be paid for the work we do. Your support over the years has been truly amazing, but we're ready to take this to the next level. We rely on small donations. So if you want to be part of a media organisation that seeks to destroy the oligarchs, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. You can also become a YouTube member for 99p. On to our final story. Karen Pollock, CBE, the chief executive of the Holocaust Education Trust, put out a pretty despicable statement in regards to recognising non-Jewish victims. The Holocaust was the murder of 6 million Jewish men, women and children. Ignoring that the victims were Jews, widening the figure to include all victims of the Second World War, or attempting to draw in contemporary conflicts is an abuse of the memory of the Holocaust and an insult to victims and survivors. Any attempts to dilute the Holocaust, strip it of its Jewish specificity, or compare it to contemporary events is unacceptable on any day. On Holocaust Memorial Day, it is especially hurtful and disrespectful and wrong. That is a wild statement, insane thing to say, that certain people are worth less than others. The idea that if you want to talk about other victims of the Holocaust, it means it's not just downplaying, but diluting what it meant for Jewish lives. Really, really insane. Now, Pollock directly contradicts what the Trust says on their own website. Holocaust Memorial Day is a national day that takes place on the 27th of January. We commemorate the 6 million Jewish men, women and children murdered during the Holocaust and the millions more murdered under the Nazi persecution. Prejudice still continues today within our communities and across the UK. We also learn and commemorate where persecution led in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. So they're talking about other genocides. I mean, are they now downplaying Jewish victims? That's their own website. In fact, this narrative of saying that we should only think about one victim over another plays into the idea and what is known as the forgotten Holocaust. Between 1933 and 1945, Roma and Sinti in Europe were targets of Nazi persecution. Building on long-held prejudices, the Nazi regime viewed Roma as asocials outside normal society and as racial inferiors. During World War II, the Nazis and their collaborators killed hundreds of thousands of Roma men, women and children across German-occupied Europe. The unreliability of pre-genocide population figures for Roma makes it difficult to estimate the number and percentage who perished. Scholarly estimates range from 300,000 to 500,000. According to the Holocaust Encyclopedia, these are all the known victims of the Holocaust who were not Jewish. So we've got around 3.3 million of Soviet murders. You can see 1.8 million. Sorry, I mean, my screen's really blurry, it's hard to see, but you can see we've got people from the black community have been murdered, gay men, bisexual men, men accused of homosexuality, people with disabilities. I mean, I'll leave that. Let's do that graphic on the screen. Again, I should have put this on my script. I put this. It's on my screen. It's really blurry, but basically, we've got a well-documented sort of number of victims from the Nazi Holocaust, right? And of course, some are more in number. Again, the Jewish people were killed by 6 million Jewish people were killed, right? But the idea that we should forget about these people was quite insane. Now, what isn't in that table are trans people. Now, we don't know the number. What we do know is that trans people were one of the first victims. So with the Institute of Sexology being looted by the Nazi youth, books were burnt, and they were essentially attempting to erase trans people from existence. So yes, Jewish people were the primary victim of the Nazi genocide. And the term Holocaust means burnt offering. However, it's disgraceful to paint them as the only victims of the Nazi genocide, or claim that pointing out Romani people, for example, who were also subject to genocide, is expanding it to all the victims of World War II. We should be talking about all of them. And of course, this narrative of only being allowed to talk about one group of people being the victims serves Zionism very well. Any comparisons of the genocide of Palestinians to the Holocaust is met with accusations of anti-Semitism or downplaying the Holocaust. Yet the entire point of Never Again is to make sure it's never happening again, yet we're allowing it to happen again. Alexander, a really crazy statement to put out. What are your thoughts?
I don't understand what they have to gain from this. I'll be quite honest. You know, I was taught. You know, I was taught from I was taught in schools about yes. The Holocaust, the main targets of the Holocaust was the Jewish people. Were the Jewish people. I think it's fair to note their centrality in the Holocaust, but to deny the genocide of other people, the Roma, the Roma and Sinti, I mean, even people with disabilities, the amount of people, the human experimentation. That happened during the Holocaust, to deny its existence, to try and exclude those people, it just seems sick. It does seem like historical revisionism, and I don't understand what they have to gain from it. I went to Romania a couple of years ago, to go visit my dad for a little bit. He was living out there, and I like to meander on my holidays. I like to go around, walk around a place, get a feel for it. And I went to the Holocaust Memorial in Budapest, and it did. There was quite a lot of it was around the Roma and Sinti people having been genocided as well. Yeah, yes, of course. It spoke to the vast number of Jewish people that were killed, but it didn't only speak about them. Why would it? Why would it? I'll be honest. I'll be honest. I don't understand what people have to gain out of denying the reality of the situation. There were targeted massacres of other peoples. I mean, even from my own personal perspective, I've got a diagnosis that says Asperger's syndrome. Hans Asperger, a man who could have who could have deemed someone like me functional and worthwhile of keeping, but someone else, another autistic person, nope, off you go.
And I just think it's crazy to because look, this is obviously the one of the leaders of the Holocaust Education Trust, but it's a statement by them because they put it out.
And a really important point as well. Holocaust education is massively important. So we don't forget.
But that seems like a lack of education there, doesn't it?
Yeah. I remember in school having Holocaust survivors come in and talk to us. I remember that. It does stay with you. So it is a really important tool. One thing that they're doing is now they're trying to use AI to keep Holocaust survivors alive, which I personally find that bizarre. It seems weird to me. But
I mean, people know my views on AI in this channel as well. But what's crazy is how that statement said, talking about other genocides is insensitive. And again, on their own website, they talk about
other
the Bosnian
genocides.
genocide, Rwanda, they talk about Cambodia on the Holocaust Education Trust, because the entire point, especially it being an education trust, is to educate about how genocides come about. I mean, the term "never again" is so meaningless. It is so meaningless when we're seeing so many genocides happen since then, and we're seeing the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people.
I think fundamentally at this point, genocide is a retrospective term. It's not something.
Very
that
good
happens,
point.
It's something that happened.
That's a really good point.
You can only view genocide as something that has happened and that it was awful. Oh no, like Srebrenica, something like that. We couldn't have prevented it. No, we're really sorry. But again, people need to start calling that out. How do we stop this happening? How do we actually call it out? Where are the international mechanisms of accountability? And they just don't exist. It kind of brings to mind Mark Carney's speech. International law is essentially just the rules-based order is essentially a myth. Even things like the Rome Statute, it is a myth. It's for the people we don't like. It's for the global north to inflict upon the global south. Is it ever going to apply to us? No.
You're absolutely right. And the international law is absolutely dead. That brings us to 8:30. I think we should go to our comments and bring in our producer. If you haven't guessed already, it's Callum. How are you?
Hello, I'm not so bad. I did tell them.
You definitely need to bring your volume down, though. I think that was really loud.
Oh, am I? Okay. I will move away from the microphone there. Yeah, I'm definitely good. I told them that it was me, so I don't know if they had a chance to work it out. I was like, "Hello, it's Callum," because I'm quieter than when Sarah's producing. She's always like, "Just hello." She's really good at multitasking. I can't do the dual thing of concentrating on the show and talking to people in the chat. I just wanted to say before we look at the comments, I just wanted to on that last story. I saw this statement on Twitter myself earlier today before we picked the stories for tonight, and I quote tweeted it, and I just want to read what I said because it's my thoughts on it really. But I said the real insult to survivors is saying never again and then doing nothing while history repeats itself. 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. Disabled, LGBT, Roma, and other people were also sent to concentration camps and murdered, and ignoring them is Holocaust denial. It just is. And yeah, it made me so angry to see that statement had gone out. And as we've pointed out in the show, the contradictory statement from what she said in that statement to what their own website says. Yeah, it makes me really angry. So to our comments, we've got lots of them actually. Let's start with the super chats. Rachel has said for a $2 super chat, what would Goodwin's book ice cream taste like?
Shit, I don't know.
What?
If it's as bad as the content of his writing.
Is it ice cream that tastes like his book, or is it a book that tastes like ice cream?
Ice cream.
Oh.
I think it would be one of those ice creams that you go into the shop and no one has touched it.
Yeah.
There's one scoop. There's one scoop. The salted caramel is just empty the entire time, and there's Matt Goodwin's book ice cream.
It's just Did that
almond flavour?
Did that clip of him eating? Did that go out like that on Sky News? Like
no, no, right. It was interesting when I was sourcing the clip. There's two. They've obviously kept the raw recording because they have the clip where it goes back and forth, and then someone found the clip of the raw one where they didn't go back to the person. So I was like, well, I'm going to show the raw one.
Yeah.
Right. I don't care because that is what happened. Right? I'm not lying. But yeah, there was an original broadcast where he's eating and then they sort of go back and forth or sort of ignore him. And then I don't know where someone got that from, but they found like the ISO recording of it. And I'm like, well, this is too funny not to show.
It's brilliant. Gilby Jackson said on that point, I'll go back to the super chats in a minute. Holding him on screen gave the same energy as you can't grow concrete. I just say it's just brilliant. It's the same. It's the same thing, isn't it?
The damn thing.
But the concrete one was funny, whereas this is just embarrassing for Matt.
Oh, it's awkward. The Green Party should just show that to people on the doorstep. That should be the Green Party's tactic.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got it
You can
downloaded
just
if they
imagine
want
the
to borrow
producers
it.
though, just sitting there, just going, "What's he doing?
What's he doing?" Yeah.
Oh, he's actually doing it.
He is eating.
He's doing it.
Yeah.
See what else he could eat.
Specs has sent us £2 and said the blazer is the creationist.
Oh my god!
Lots
I should
of
have
love.
said that stupid comment now.
Lots of love for your blazer against tonight, though, and a couple of
good.
people. Someone said, I can't remember who it was. Someone said that they'd been listening in, they'd not been watching, they'd been listening in the background, and when they looked, they saw the blazer, and they were quite happy with that. So.
Oh, I'm glad I made you happy.
Ride Feather has gifted 10 Turn 11 memberships. Thank you so
Legend.
much for that. Scottish Soul has just become a member as well, so thank you very much for that. And Gilby Jackson sent another £2 and said, well in getting Alex on B&H Massive. I can't even read that. PDST.
Pedestrianise it all?
Pedestrianise it all. There we go.
Yeah?
Yeah, well done. You're down with it. You're down with
Brighton
the
and
kids
Hove
speak.
Massive.
B&H Massive, yes, absolutely.
B&H Massive.
I feel like that's something I would write. But that's something I would write to try and sound younger. You sure
Yeah,
you're not boomers, like I'm down with the kids.
And reading that out loud makes me feel ancient, actually.
Yes. Hello, fellow children. 'Tis I. Here, part of your massive.
I agree with the comment though. Absolutely.
On Reform and Matt Goodwin, we've got this one from Arthur who said he means non-white. Everything not white isn't British to Matt. I mean, he's gonna struggle on that in a constituency that's got a large population of people from other ethnic backgrounds, isn't he? In theory, although maybe not if you look at the polling.
But that, what I find someone like Matt Goodwin so like weaselly and pathetic is that when they're called out on that, they try and downplay it. So like the clip of Ash Sarkar, she said, "Do you consider me English?" She's like, well, yes. And then she went through meticulously the evidence in which he seems to categorize people as non-British or non-English based on their skin color without saying it, right? He sort of, I mean, he does kind of say it, but he doesn't say, I am a racist. Racists don't say, I am a racist, by the way. No. Then he'll say, I didn't mean that, but then go on Twitter and say something else. So, like, these people just need to stop being such pussies and just say you're a racist. Like, why? They get so offended when you call them out for what they say. But of course, when you say I am a racist, people don't typically like that. So they are trying to like shoehorn in racism to people who won't be susceptible if you say, oh, I'm a racist.
I find it really funny because they would never call me not English or not British.
Exactly.
No one's ever questioned me. And for context, I'm a dual national. I'm a quarter English, but I've got a British passport. You know, only one of my grandparents was born here. The biological ones. The rest of them are all over the place. You know, but I got the blonde hair, blue eyed genes. My sister does not. You know, she's got dark hair. People keep asking her whether she's Asian, and I didn't know this. I didn't know this, or growing up. People would ask her, especially when she moved to London. She'd get into taxis, and people would ask her, "Where's she from? Where's she from? Where's she from?" And I was just looking at her, just going, "But you're English."
Yeah.
Well, what are you on about?
Alexander, it's funny you say it because you're quarter English, you say. I'm half English. Now, if we were to document throughout our lives, who was probably question my English more, me or you?
Exactly. Never. And also, whenever I go to the Netherlands, you know, I must have only spent like a cumulative year there in total in my entire life. But I've got a passport. I can put on the accent. No one ever questions it.
But the good thing, the thing that you both have in common is that if you really delve down into the detail, Matt Goodwin would want both of you deported. Yay!
Yes.
He'd probably both of us, but he'd start with me.
Oh, he'd start with you,
Oh,
Curtis,
yeah, no,
definitely.
absolutely, yeah.
He'd start with you. He'd get
Priorities,
to,
right?
Yeah, no, he'd get to
He'd
Alex
start with
eventually.
you.
Yeah,
When
get
he gets to the
eventually.
one drop rule, then I'm gone.
Yeah.
You know?
Jim Speaks just said regarding Matt Goodwin, he doesn't strike me as a great thinker.
No, he
I like
really
this from
isn't.
Flow Snake as well, just because I wanted to take on the challenge of reading it, which was beware the low-paid, high-influence people with their low-fat, mocha choca frappe, flat white avocado toast chinos.
Yep. There we are. That's me. I'm more of a flat white guy. But
Oof,
yeah,
really?
no. Someone today did order a. What did they order? A gingerbread. Or was it? It was a gingerbread oat mocha, and they apologized for it. And I genuinely just like, don't worry. As long as it makes sense, I'll make it.
I mean, not to sound like I'm a child, but that sounds really nice.
It does actually, yeah.
Although I would have the coffee in it because I need my coffee.
Oh no,
I can't-
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. I'll have a little flat, a tiny little mocha, like the size of a flat white, with a little caramel syrup in there, and it's nice. It's nice. It tastes like a salted caramel brownie.
It sounds delicious. Speaking of beverages, I just wanted to share this one from Edward, who said, by the way, this is a historic night. I've been diagnosed as pre-diabetic, so I'm drinking my last 2 cans of lager ever as I watch. All the best, Edwards, and thanks for sharing that. And
well, I would say
it's-
though, happy. I mean, I know you don't want to stop drinking from your emoji, but you know what? Let's all have a. I've lost my train of thought. Basically, this is going to be healthier for you.
Congratulations on a new new path.
I'm trying to congratulate you without it being congratulatory.
Yeah. It probably will be better for you.
Yeah.
I do feel for you.
Here's the good health, Edward.
You can have a lot of virgin cocktails.
Ride Feathers said, I just wanted to pull this one up. Imagine going on GB News in the hopes to get recruited as a full-time grifter, but you turn up whilst Curtis is on, and he destroys your arguments and then calls you a cook as a finisher. That was Curtis's performance on GB News the other evening.
They should put me head to head with Matt.
Are we
Goodwin.
reclaiming the word cuck? Is that it?
I think the left is I've seen a lot of leftists reclaim the word cuck. So.
Curtis used it about 4 times on GB News, and I'm watching on the telly, and I'm thinking, how on earth has he gotten away with this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm surprised Ofcom.
I don't think because I
onto
don't think that they know what it means. So I'm just like.
Spexer said, "Oh no, the place where you live being walkable somehow means the workers own the means of production." Wait, how is this bad?
I wish.
As Nofi's pointed out, Nofi, God, I wish good public infrastructure was communist. All hail the communal pavement. This whole story is insane. The 15-minute city thing is just like, Becca points out, I live 15 minutes away from the big Tesco. My doctor, 8 minutes walk from work. I'm in my townie era. Like you said, Curtis, why would we not want to have everything accessible? We're not saying that people can't leave.
Yeah, it's not like saying you have to stay in the area.
I mean, Graham said 15 minutes walkable city equals good. Government tracking you and fining you for driving equals bad. What if you're disabled or less able to walk? It's my understanding. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, that the 15-minute city plan, it doesn't actually include this. We're going to track everywhere you go and then fine you if you use certain roads. That's this extra bit that's been added in. What it might have is it might have some roads that are pedestrianised for certain hours where you can't drive them during hours when it's a pedestrianised road, in order to make space for pedestrians. But it's not like if you leave the 15-minute area, you're gonna be tracked and fined, is it?
I mean, do you also think the Telegraph are moaning about this because they care about disabled people? Of course they fucking don't, do they? They don't have disabled people in mind.
But they're conflating the idea of a 15-minute city with an LTN. They're conflating the two. The 15-minute city is fundamentally about social services and community spaces. The LTN is about stopping people rat running through residential neighborhoods. Moving that that driving to the boundaries, and there's different ways to do that. One is APN cameras, and 2 is with physical infrastructure. The conflation of the two fundamentally is just pure dishonesty. In order to whip up fear.
On the brief conversation we had about Chagos, and I think Curtis, you'd said about GB News talking about it a lot. Jay has said they're speaking to the Britannia rules the wave, 2 world wars and 1 World Cup
Yeah.
brigade. That's why they're doing it.
2 world wars, 1 World Cup. That's true. It's
it
imperialism.
will come home
isn't it?
again. That's right. 2 world wars, 1 World Cup.
And
We'll bring Chagos back to us.
Yeah,
I had a look. I had a look. By the way, we were talking about locating Chagos on a map. I thought I'll have a go. I'll see if I can do it. And I had a look, and I went somewhere to the southeast coast of Africa. I was looking in the South Atlantic Ocean. I didn't know it's actually in the Indian Ocean. It's somewhere sort of.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of south of India and west of Africa. It's in that sort of general direction. So that's where you need to head if you're looking.
I mean, someone who's terrible at geography, I never would have guessed.
Yeah,
that.
no.
It's closer than I
and
thought
just
it'd be.
In response to the final story, Sunchild Tarot said she can fuck right off. Where did the pink triangles come from? I mean, yeah, like it just made me so angry when I saw that. It just really, really did. And Ride Feather again has said, and now the US is compiling lists of people with ASD diagnoses and coming out with bullshit ableist conspiracy theories such as paracetamol causes autism.
Thank God for RFK Jr., right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when the what was it, the MMR vaccine stuff came out. What's his face? Wakefield? I can't remember. But yeah, the doctor came up with the dodgy study about the MMR vaccine, and and then he got struck off. But the cat's out of the bag at that point. People.
Yeah.
Andrew Wakefield. Yeah, no, the commenters have got it. And just imagine how many people have managed to get, measles, mumps, rubella purely through the disinformation. The worry that the one is the worry that their children are gonna, get autism, as though I can get rid of it. But 2, just the pure the lack of education around vaccines. And that, once that stuff's out of the bag, it's out there, it's gone. There's always going to be those people that are going to latch onto these conspiracy theories, and you just it's
the anti-science movement really scares me.
Mr. Wakefield, not a doctor. Yeah.
But the anti-science movement scares me, and of course, that was the sort of resurgence of it in the 90s. My parents telling me about how vaccines cause autism. That was a very old thing, and of course, it wasn't the exact same. But when it comes to COVID, that sort of brought on the resurgence of anti-science, and now RFK Jr. is actually trying to say that vaccines cause autism. It's so fucking dangerous. And it would be fine if it didn't affect the rest of us, but it does. Health is such an important issue. And we have people jeopardizing the health of other people because they've bought into their stupid, crazy conspiracy theories. And I really, really hate it. I mean, I hated it and it was never like sort of mainstream, but when you listen to Christian fundamentalists who believe that the earth is 3,000 years old and they think the earth is flat, that really drives me up the wall. But it's not a mainstream thing. It's never going to catch on to most people. But when it comes to vaccines, that seems to have, anti-vaccine sentiment has far more popularity than that kind of stuff.
Well, we've had a TB outbreak in the UK again recently, haven't we? I mean, part of it was in an Amazon factory, which I wouldn't expect anything less from the employers that are known to really care for their employees. But I mean, you've got TB on the rise. We've seen problems with measles as well. As a result of this rhetoric, because parents are frightened to vaccinate the kids because of nonsense like that.
And the government will struggle to do something about it because it's going to be, it's COVID all over again. Like that's the worry here. It's like we can't be as rapid or whatever, or as, if you want to say forceful, which again, when it comes to, like, I'm a libertarian, when it comes to like health issues, yes, I'm absolutely for the state to kind of clamp down on your freedoms temporarily. And it's not really clamping on your freedoms. It was like stay home. I mean, Germany had it right. They said just stay home and chill.
But also the government's lost trust. People have lost trust with democracy and politics and government. So when politicians turn around and say, no, guys, seriously, you need to get vaccinated because there's a dangerous disease running around, no one trusts them.
No.
And not enough people don't trust them that actually they will end up contracting that. And I, working through COVID in a hospitality setting, You know, you keep your mask. You know, you try and keep your mask on. The fabric mask that your mum made you. You know, and people, you know, people would come in, just waltz in, no masks, come right up to the counter, stride right through the door, blah blah blah.
Listen,
it's
you and I
all
could,
rubbish.
You and I could talk for hours about working hospitality at the start of COVID. Honestly,
I was serving pints
really
at
could.
like 11:30 at night with the mask on.
Yeah,
which is just strange because obviously, like, especially drunk people, they become less aware of their surroundings. So you're like got your mask on, pouring pints,
it's
and
worth
just spit going everywhere.
It's probably worth mentioning at this point that I'm pretty confident. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty confident that the COVID inquiry found that. I mean, we knew this anyway. That the Eat Out to Help Out scheme actually made things worse.
Yes,
who'd have guessed it? But listen,
stuff.
that's it from me tonight. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure as always. I'll hand back over to Curtis for wrapping up.
Thank you so much, Callum. And again, thank you to all your comments. Of course, that is all we have time for. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. And thank you, Alexander, for joining me tonight. You were absolutely incredible. We're going to have you on again soon, definitely.
Thank you very much, guys. Pleasure to be on. Happy to come back anytime.
And you know what? His setup's really, really good. I love his lighting. He's competing, isn't he? Remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you can become a YouTube member for just 99p. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in, and I'll see you again on Friday.